I didn't grow up calling them the little people. That name came later, after I understood that giving something a title doesn't make it smaller. Sometimes it makes it closer. When I was a kid, we just called them the neighbors, not out loud, not directly, just in the way you adjust your behavior without knowing why. The place was rural enough that maps stopped being helpful. Northern woods, old trails that predated roads, land that had been walked thin by people who didn't leave records. My family's house sat near a tree line that never quite felt like the edge of anything. It felt like an overlap. The forest didn't begin there. It pressed against us. Things went missing long before anything felt wrong. Not valuables, not important things, small things. A shoe left on the porch, a spoon set beside the sink, a pocket knife I'd sworn I'd put on the table. They didn't disappear, they relocated. We'd find them days later in places no one remembered putting them, tucked neatly, almost politely, balanced on stumps, lined up along stones. Once, my father found his missing watch placed gently inside an old boot that hadn't been worn in years. No one accused anyone else. That was the first rule, even if we never said it. You don't accuse the forest. The second rule came later. If you hear something small moving where nothing should be, you don't follow it. I learned that this summer I turned 12. I was walking the boundary trail behind the house, the one that loops without ever really going anywhere. The light was thinning, not dark yet, but no longer friendly. That gray gold hour where shadows feel longer than they should. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, not heavy, not rushed, measured. Like someone careful not to be noticed, but not afraid of being found. I stopped. They stopped. That's when my stomach dropped. Because whatever it was, it had been matching me, step for step, waiting. And somewhere deep in my memory, something old stirred, not a voice, not a thought, just a warning that didn't belong to me. You're walking where they walk. I didn't run. Instinct told me running would make it playful. Instead, I backed away slowly, eyes forward, breath controlled, pretending foolishly that I hadn't noticed anything at all. Behind me, a stone clicked softly, placed, not thrown. That's when I understood something that would take years to fully sink in. The little people don't announce themselves. They arrange you, and once they've noticed you, they remember. After that evening on the boundary trail, nothing dramatic happened. That's important to say, because people expect fear to arrive loudly, screaming, chasing, crashing through trees. That's not how this works. Real fear doesn't burst in, it settles. For weeks afterward, life continued almost normally. School, chores, meals at the same wooden table that had been sanded smooth by 3 generations of hands. But something subtle had shifted, like a chair moved slightly out of alignment in a room you know too well. I started noticing patterns. The forest sounded different depending on where I stood. Birds went quiet in specific pockets, not large areas, just patches. 10 steps one way, sound returned. 10 steps back, silence again, as if invisible lines had been drawn and respected. I asked my mother once why we never cleared the land further back, even though we could have used the space. She didn't answer right away. She kept peeling potatoes, her hands steady, her eyes focused on the thin strip of skin curling away from the blade. "That part doesn't like being changed," she said finally. Not can't, not shouldn't, doesn't like. That phrasing stuck with me. Later that night, I overheard my parents talking quietly in the living room, not arguing, negotiating. Their voices carried the careful tone adults use when they don't want walls to listen. My father was saying we'd lost another chicken. No feathers, no blood, just gone. My mother replied, "Was anything left behind?" There was a pause. "Yes," my father said. 3 pebbles in a row. Neither of them sounded surprised. That was when I realized something unsettling. This wasn't new to them. They had rules. They just hadn't taught them to me yet. The rules weren't written down. They were enforced through habit. Don't whistle after sunset. Don't leave food uncovered outside. If something goes missing, don't curse, apologize. Never take more than you need from the woods, and if you do, leave something behind. Coins, bread, salt. Payment, my grandmother once called it, though she corrected herself immediately. Not payment, she said. Acknowledgement. When I asked who we were acknowledging, she gave me a look that made my chest feel tight. Those who were here before we learned how to ask permission. That summer, I began noticing the small places. Tiny gaps between tree roots that looked intentional. Stones stacked where gravity alone couldn't explain them. Narrow paths that twisted between brush too dense for animals, but perfectly sized for something shorter, knee-high. Sometimes I'd catch movement at the edge of my vision, never fully seen, just the suggestion of motion, like heat distortion, except the air wasn't warm enough for that. Once, near dusk, I smelled smoke. Not campfire smoke, old smoke, damp wood, something ancient and domestic. I followed it a few steps before stopping myself. The memory of the footsteps, matching mine, rose up like a warning flare. That was the first time I felt it clearly. They were aware of me as an individual now, not just people, me. The dreams started soon after, not nightmares, not at first, just rooms that weren't rooms. Low ceilings, uneven floors, warm, earthy smells. The sense of being watched by something amused rather than hostile. I'd wake up with dirt under my fingernails, my sheets disturbed as if I'd been gripping them too tightly. One morning I found a braid tied into my shoelace. Too small to be mine, too neat to be accidental. I stared at it for a long time before untying it. That was a mistake, because that afternoon the woods went quiet again, deeper this time. A silence that pressed against my ears until I became aware of my own heartbeat. I felt it then, a presence behind me. Not close enough to touch, close enough to matter. And in that moment, standing perfectly still, I understood the most important rule of all. The one no one ever teaches you directly. The little people don't hurt you because they're angry. They hurt you when you forget you're a guest. And I was forgetting. There's a difference between being watched and being included. I didn't understand that distinction until the night the sounds changed. It happened just after dusk, when the sky still held a faint bruise of purple and the forest hadn't fully decided whether to sleep or stay awake. I was sitting on the back steps, not doing anything important, just listening the way people do when they're avoiding their own thoughts. That's when I heard it. Not footsteps. Footsteps imply weight, intent, direction. This was lighter, irregular, like something pacing while thinking. Then came the voices. They weren't voices the way we understand them. No clear words, no sentences. more like fragments of sound stitched together from other things. The click of stones, the rustle of leaves, the hollow echo of wood knocked against wood. At first, I thought it was wind. Then the wind answered back. I stood up so fast the chair tipped over behind me. The moment I moved, the sound stopped, not faded, cut, as if silence itself had been commanded. I whispered an apology without knowing why. The forest breathed again. That was the moment I realized something crucial. They could hear me even when I didn't speak. The next day, my grandmother asked me a question she had never asked before. "Have they started talking yet?" I froze, not because of the question, but because of how casually she asked it, like she was inquiring about the weather. I asked who. She gave a tired smile, the kind that carries relief and concern at the same time. "Then it's begun," she said. She finally told me what she had avoided my entire life. That the little people aren't one thing, there are many. Different names, different behaviors, different rules depending on the land and the people who remembered them. Some help, some punish, some simply observe. But they all share one trait. They notice when someone notices them, and once that happens, the boundary thins. That evening I left an offering, not because I was told to, because the idea lodged itself in my mind fully formed. Bread, a small piece of apple, salt, arranged carefully on a flat stone near the tree line. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't even look directly at it after setting it down. I walked away slowly. The next morning, the food was gone. Not eaten, gone. And in its place, a smooth stone carved with lines too precise to be natural. Spirals, not decorative, intentional, like a map to somewhere you weren't supposed to go. I didn't touch it. I knew better now, but that didn't stop what came next. The first time they approached me, I didn't see them. I felt them. A pressure around my calves, like standing in tall grass that isn't there. A sudden heaviness in the air, as if the gravity itself had been slightly adjusted. Then came laughter, soft, breathless, wrongly joyful. It didn't echo, it circled. It turned slowly, too slowly, and caught movement just beyond the trees. Small figures, their shapes shifting between solid and suggestion, their faces hidden, their heads tilted in curiosity. They weren't hiding anymore. They were waiting, testing whether I would panic, whether I would chase, whether I would run. I remembered another rule then, one never spoken aloud. If you see them clearly, you've already broken something. So I looked down, and the laughter changed. It sharpened, less amused, more interested. That was the moment I understood what was truly happening. They weren't just letting me hear them now. They were deciding what kind of story I would become. After that night, the forest stopped pretending it was neutral. That's the best way I can describe it. Before, the woods felt indifferent, vast, ancient, uncaring in the way mountains and rivers are. But now there was a tension in it, direction, a sense that the land itself had leaned forward slightly, curious to see what I would do next. Nothing chased me, nothing touched me, nothing announced itself. Instead, small things began to go wrong, not dramatic wrong, inconvenient wrong, the kind of wrong that feels almost petty. My keys vanished for hours at a time, only to reappear exactly where I had already looked, placed neatly, deliberately. Shoes turned up, tied together by their laces. Tools left outside overnight were rearranged, aligned into patterns that made my stomach tighten when I noticed them. Always odd numbers, always symmetrical, always just off enough to make me question myself. At first, I tried to explain it away. Fatigue, stress, my grandmother's failing health weighing on my mind. But the explanations never held for long because the timing was too precise. It always happened after dusk, always when I was alone, and always stopped the moment I acknowledged it. Not out loud, internally. The moment I thought they did this, it stopped, as if recognition completed the act. My grandmother finally called me into her room one afternoon. She looked smaller than she had even the day before, like the space around her was gently reclaiming what it had lent her. "They're playing with you," she said. I asked why. She closed her eyes before answering. "Because you noticed, and because you didn't react the way they expected." That's when she explained something no one ever tells you directly. The little people test humans the way humans test boundaries. They push, they provoke, they watch what breaks first. Patience, fear, anger, respect. "They don't want to hurt you," she said. "They want to know what kind of human you are." I asked her what kind they disliked most. She didn't hesitate. The ones who feel entitled. That night, the game escalated. I was walking back from the shed when I heard my name. Not shouted, not whispered. Spoken casually, like someone saying it just to check if you were nearby. I stopped cold. The voice wasn't unfamiliar. That was the worst part. It sounded like my cousin, who haven't visited in months. I didn't answer. The name came again. Closer this time. Same tone, same inflection. Perfect imitation. I felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to turn around the sound. A physical pull, like my muscles had already decided without consulting me. Instead, I bowed my head, not deeply, not theoretically, just enough. The voice stopped, and something in the forest shifted. Not anger, disappointment. The following morning, I found footprints near the house. Bare, small, too well defined to be animal. They didn't lead toward the forest. They led away from it, toward the house, and stopped at the threshold. They never crossed it. That's when I realized something important. There were still rules protecting me. I just didn't know how many more I could afford to break. The elders say the little people don't steal children anymore. That's what they tell outsiders, at least. What they mean is this: they don't take you all at once. They take your certainty, your routines, your sense of being alone. By the time you notice what's missing, you've already stepped too far into their attention, and they don't like to lose interest. The first thing the forest asked for was small. So small I almost missed it. I noticed it one morning when I reached for my jacket and felt the pocket was lighter than it should have been. I checked again, slower this time. My fingers traced the lining, then pressed into the corner where I always kept the same thing. Gone. A smooth coin my grandmother had given me years ago. Not valuable, not rare, just old, warmed by years of handling. She had told me once it was important to keep something of yourself on you when walking near certain places. Not protection, she said, identification. I searched everywhere, the house, the yard, the path to the shed. Nothing. That night I dreamed of hands, small hands, too many joints, fingers bending in ways fingers shouldn't. They passed the coin between them, fascinated not by its shape, but by the fact that it had been mine. I woke up with the taste of metal in my mouth. The next offering I left wasn't intentional. I didn't place it on a stone or arrange it carefully. I simply forgot a piece of bread on the back step. Just for a moment, just long enough. By morning, it was gone. In its place sat a bundle of twigs tied together with a strip of dried grass. The knots were impossibly tied, decorative, purposeful, a gift or a receipt. I didn't touch it. I didn't throw it away. I left it exactly where it was. That turned out to be the correct choice because the forest responded. The days grew heavier, the air thickened like sound had to push through it to reach my ears. Every noise arrived slightly late, slightly distorted. I began to feel watched even indoors, especially near doorways and windows. Thresholds mattered to them. I learned that from my grandmother on one of her clearer afternoons. They don't like crossings, she said. They respect them. That's why doors work, why names work, why promises matter. I asked her what happens if you break a promise to them. She looked at me for a long time. They collect, she said quietly, and then they don't forget. One evening, just before sunset, I heard movement beneath the floorboards. Not rats, not settling wood. This was rhythmic, deliberate, like something packing back and forth, testing the limits of the space. I sat perfectly still, counting my breaths, feeling the vibration through the soles of my feet. Then came a tap. Once, twice, 3 times, directly beneath where I stood. I remembered another rule then. One never spoken aloud but always followed. Never answer knocks you didn't hear with your ears. I didn't move. The tapping stopped. A moment later, something rolled across the floor behind me. I turned slowly. There, resting near the doorway, was the coin. Clean, polished, warm, returned, but not forgiven. That night, the laughter came back, softer now, closer to the ground. It threaded through the trees, weaving in and out of the spaces between trunks. I could hear it circling the house, testing windows, brushing against walls, not trying to get in, counting exits. That's when I understood what they were doing. They weren't asking anymore. They were negotiating. The elders say the little people don't demand sacrifices. That's a misunderstanding. They accept exchanges, time, attention, respect, memory. And if you don't offer something willingly, they choose for you. I realized then that every missing object, every rearranged tool, every interrupted routine wasn't harassment. It was inventory. They were learning what mattered to me and preparing to take the next thing on the list. After the coin returned, I stopped pretending this was coincidence. There's a moment in experiences like this, a quiet internal shift, where denial simply exhausts itself. You don't decide to believe. You just run out of energy for disbelief. That's where I was. From that point on, I lived carefully, not cautiously, carefully. There's a difference. Caution is fear-based. Care is respect-based. I stopped walking without purpose. Every step outside the house became deliberate. I spoke less. I listened more. When something felt off, I didn't question it. I obeyed it. And for a while, that worked. The forest calmed, not friendly, neutral, like a predator choosing not to move because it hasn't decided yet whether the effort will be worth it. But neutrality never lasts. The elders say the little people don't like being talked about openly. What they don't tell you is that they hate being ignored once acknowledged. That balance is delicate, and I broke it without realizing how. It happened during a visit. A friend from the city came to check on me, concerned about my grandmother, concerned about me. He brought noise with him, music from his car, laughter too loud for the land it entered. He walked where he wanted, picked up stones, kicked leaves aside without thought. He whistled. I told him to stop. He laughed. That laugh echoed wrong. I felt it immediately. That pressure changed again. Like the forest inhaling sharply, the birds vanished mid-song. Even the air seemed to hold still. My friend noticed nothing. That night, he didn't sleep. He tossed and turned on the couch, mumbling half-formed sentences, jerking awake as if something had brushed against him repeatedly. At one point, he sat upright and asked me why there were children whispering under the floor. They weren't, but there used to be. By morning, his shoes were gone. Not misplaced, not stolen, gone. We searched everywhere, house, yard, woods, nothing. I felt the mistake settle into my chest like a stone. He left that afternoon, barefoot, irritated, unsettled, promised to mail his shoes back when he found them. He never did. Years later, he told me he still dreams of small hands holding something he can't quite see. The forest didn't punish him immediately. That's the cruelest part. It waited. Days passed, then weeks. My grandmother's condition worsened. Her moments of clarity became rarer, but when they came, they were sharper, like something was pressing knowledge back into her before time ran out. One evening, she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "They've marked you," she said. I asked how. She tapped my chest gently. "Once. They remember you." That wasn't comfort. That was a sentence. The marking didn't show on my skin. It showed in reactions. Animals avoided me. Dogs refused to come near. Birds lifted early if I stepped into a clearing. Even insects seemed to redirect their paths around me. I wasn't being hunted. I was being recognized, and recognition cuts both ways. The dreams changed again. I no longer visited their spaces. They visited mine. I dreamed of being very small, standing beneath towering shapes that never fully resolved. Voices pressed in from every direction, not loud, but insistent, asking questions without words. What do you value? What do you trade? What would you abandon? I woke each time with the sense that my answers had been taken whether I offered them or not. The first consequence arrived quietly. I forgot something important. Not misplaced, forgotten. A name. Someone I loved deeply. Someone whose face I could still picture, whose voice I could almost hear, but whose name slipped away every time I reached for it. That terrified me more than any laughter, any footsteps, any whisper, because this wasn't theft. This was extraction. They weren't taking objects anymore. They were taking pieces of me that made me me. That's when I understood the real danger of the little people. They don't drag you into the forest. They don't steal you in the night. They stay close long enough to learn what you're made of, and then slowly remove the parts they like best, until one day you don't remember why you ever feared them. And by then, you belong to the land as much as they do. The idea of leaving didn't arrive suddenly. It grew. At first, it was just a passing thought, a whisper in the back of my mind whenever the forest went too quiet or the dreams pressed too close. But over time, the thought sharpened, took shape, became something with edges. I had stayed because of my grandmother, because of obligation, because of love, because some places don't let you leave without consequence. But now even the house felt compromised. I could feel a tension there, not hostile, not aggressive, just patient, like something confident it had all the time it needed. That's what finally scared me. Patience implies certainty. I planned the departure carefully, not in the way people plan trips, but in the way animals prepare to migrate, instinctively, quietly, without announcing intention. I packed only what was necessary, no keepsakes, no sentimental objects, I left behind anything that felt claimed. The coin stayed. I didn't argue. I didn't apologize. I acknowledged the exchange and moved on. Before sunrise, I stood at the edge of the yard and did something I'd never seen anyone do before. I asked permission. Not loud. Inside. I thanked the land for shelter, for lessons, for restraint. I promised nothing. Promises bind you. I simply stated that I was leaving. The forest listened. That's when the wind stopped. As I drove away, the road felt longer than it ever had. Trees leaned closer, shadows stretching across the asphalt like reaching fingers. I didn't look in the mirrors. Looking back invites pursuit. That's another rule. When I crossed the final bend and the forest broke open into open land, I exhaled for the first time in weeks. I thought I had succeeded. That was my second mistake. The little people, they don't chase. They follow, quietly, patiently. They don't need proximity. They need connection. And I had carried too much of them with me already. The signs didn't appear immediately. They waited until I settled, until I started to believe in normalcy again, until the routines of another place began to soften the memory of the woods. Then small things returned, objects slightly rearranged, odd numbers appearing where there shouldn't be any, laughter in the spaces between buildings late at night, low, distant, amused. I told myself it was stress. I told myself it was grief. But I recognized the patterns, and recognition is invitation. The worst moment came months later. I was walking through a park, open, public, safe. Children played nearby. Dogs barked. Sunlight filtered through familiar trees that felt nothing like the forest I'd left behind. And yet, I felt it. That pressure again. The sudden absence of sound. I stopped walking. So did everyone else. Not consciously, instinctively. A ripple of stillness passed through the spaces like a held breath. I looked down. There were small footprints in the dirt beside the path. Bare, neat, heading in the same direction I was. I didn't run. I didn't panic. I did the only thing that had ever worked. I acknowledged them. Silently, respectfully. And then I kept walking. The footprints stopped, but they didn't turn back. That was the lesson. You don't escape the little people. You outgrow their interest, or you don't. You learn to live in a way that doesn't provoke attention. You learn the old rules and carry them quietly into new places. And if you're lucky, they let you go. I still follow the rules. I don't whistle after dark. I don't take without leaving something behind. I never mock the old stories. And when I hear laughter where it doesn't belong, I don't look. There's a mistake people make when they hear stories like this. They assume survival means victory. It doesn't. Survival just means the story keeps going. Time passed, enough of it that I could function again, enough that the fear dulled into something quieter, a low hum beneath daily life. Like tinnitus, you forget about until the room goes silent. I built routines that were careful without being obvious. I learned which habits soothed the land around me and which ones stirred discomfort. Some of them made sense, some didn't. I followed them anyway, because one thing had become very clear. These stories aren't warnings meant to scare children. They're instructions, and instructions don't expire. I began noticing how often the little people appeared under different names, different tribes, different regions, different descriptions, but always the same patterns. Small beings, ancient, territorial, bound to place, bound to behavior. Sometimes helpful, sometimes cruel, always consistent. The details changed because people changed. The rules didn't. That's why the stories survived colonization, language loss, forced migration, ridicule. They adopted, slipped into folk tales, became legends, got softened, simplified, dismissed. But they never disappeared because the land never forgot. I attended a gathering once, nothing official, just elders talking, sharing food, letting silence do some of the work conversation usually tries to rush past. Someone mentioned strange happenings near a construction site, tools vanishing, workers quitting without explanation, machines malfunctioning in ways no engineer could account for. One elder nodded slowly. They didn't ask, he said. That was all. No argument followed, no debate. Everyone understood. That's when it hit me. The little people aren't relics, they're responses. They emerge where boundaries are ignored, where land is treated as inert, passive, owned. They're what happens when respect erodes. They don't announce themselves with thunder or fire. They whisper, they nudge, they inconvenience. And if those warnings are ignored long enough, they escalate. I used to think the laughter was mockery. I was wrong. It's amusement, not at suffering, but at predictability. Humans repeat mistakes. We forget. We dismiss what doesn't fit into our era, our technology, our assumptions of dominance. And the land responds the same way it always has. The scariest realization didn't come in the woods. It came in a city. I was standing on a crowded street one evening when I noticed something small move between parked cars. Too quick to identify, too deliberate to ignore. No one else reacted. They never do, because belief isn't required. Awareness is enough. The little people don't want worship. They don't want fear. They want acknowledgement. They want you to remember that you are not the first one to walk here, and you will not be the last, and that memory carries responsibility. That's why these stories are told the way they are, not linear, not neat, not resolved. They linger, they attach, they wait for the right listener. Someone who won't laugh, someone who won't challenge, someone who understands that survival doesn't mean freedom, it means adaptation. If you're hearing this now, that doesn't mean you're chosen. It means you're paying attention, and attention is where it always begins. There is a final rule. It isn't taught directly, it isn't written down, and no one ever explains it to you in plain words, because once you understand it, you're already responsible. The rule is this: do not try to define them, not by name, not by size, not by intent. The moment you try to lock the little people into a single explanation, spirit, creator, myth, hallucination, you've already crossed the line, because definition is a form of ownership, and ownership is what they resist most. I learned this the hard way. After everything that happened, curiosity crept in where fear used to live. I started reading more, comparing accounts, trying to map similarities. I thought understanding would make me safer. It did the opposite. The signs came back, not dramatic, not violent, just present. Footprints that stopped mid-step. Objects moved just enough to notice. A pressure in the air, like being watched without hostility, just awareness. The land wasn't angry, it was correcting me. An elder once explained it without realizing he was explaining anything. These stories, he said, aren't meant to be solved. They are meant to be carried. Carried the way you carry a boundary, the way you carry a promise, the way you carry grief without turning it into a weapon. The little people exist in the space between categories. Not good, not evil, not guardians, not monsters. They are continuity. They are what remains when human timelines collapse and restart again and again. That's why trying to label them weakens you. You stop listening, you start amusing, you start assuming, and assumption is louder than respect. There's another part of the rule, quieter but more important. If you encounter something you cannot explain, do not react immediately. No shouting, no running, no recording, no calling attention. Stillness is not submission, it's acknowledgement. I've noticed something since learning this. People who claim to see everything never see them again. People who say nothing sometimes do. This isn't superstition, it's etiquette. The same way you don't stare too long at someone who clearly doesn't want to be seen. The same way you don't demand answers for something older than your language. The stories don't end with confrontation for a reason. They end with restraint, with silence, with the listener choosing not to push further. Because the last truth is this: the little people don't punish disbelief, they punish disrespect. And disrespect usually begins with certainty. There comes a moment, if you've carried the story long enough, when you understand something deeply uncomfortable. You're no longer the observer, you're the variable. It happened to me months after everything was supposed to be over. No words, no night hike, no strange sounds. Just an ordinary afternoon. I was at home, sorting through old notes, half thinking about the story, half trying not to. That's when I noticed the silence, not the peaceful kind, the listening kind. The ear felt calibrated, like a room waiting for a response. I remembered thinking, this is ridiculous, and the instant that thought formed, something inside me tightened. Not fear, recognition. You see, the little people don't appear when you're scared. They appear when you forget you should be careful. I noticed small changes first, patterns interrupting themselves, clocks losing seconds, then catching up, rooms feeling slightly too narrow, like perspective was being adjusted. Nothing dramatic, nothing that could be proven, which is exactly how they prefer it. That's when I realized the truth no story tells outright. They don't watch to intervene, they watch to evaluate, not judgment, assessment. Think of it this way. You don't step on an ant because it doesn't register. You don't step on a snake because it commands respect. But something in between, something that might notice you, that's what gets measured. I began to sense boundaries, invisible but firm. Places I used to linger suddenly felt off limits. Thoughts I pushed too far come with a pressure behind the eyes. Questions formed and dissolved before I could finish them. It was like my own mind had been fitted with gradual rails. And here's the part that unsettles me the most. I wasn't afraid. I was compliant. Not because I was forced, but because some instinct older than logic understood the consequences of ignoring the signal. People ask why there are no clear endings to these stories, why no final encounter, no confrontation, no revelation. This is why, because once you realize you are being measured, you stop demanding proof, you start behaving. I changed small habits without meaning to. I stopped speaking certain names aloud. I stopped wandering without purpose. I stopped thinking of the land as background. And with every adjustment, the pressure eased, not disappeared, eased. That's when it hit me. The stories aren't warnings about monsters. They're tests, and most people fail them without ever knowing they were taking one. There's a question. The little people seem to ask, not in words, but in conditions. Can you coexist without needing control? Can you know without claiming? Can you walk through something ancient without insisting it explain itself to you? Most can't. That's why the stories continue. That's why they change locations but never tone. That's why you're listening now. Because once you hear enough of them, you start wondering whether this story found you by accident. There's a belief shared quietly across multiple tribes, never loudly, never formally, that the little people don't punish, they withdraw, and that withdrawal is worse. After I understood I was being measured, something else began to happen. Access closed, not doors, not paths, luck. Things that used to work stopped, opportunities stalled at the last second, plans unraveled without resistance. People forgot conversations we definitely had. No hostility, just absence. At first, I blamed myself. Burnout, stress, overthinking. That's what modern logic tells you to do. Internalize everything. But this felt external, environmental, like trying to walk with gravity slightly increased. Here's the mistake most people make when they brush too close to these stories. They try to fix it. They apologize out loud. They research rituals. They mimic respect instead of practicing it. That never works because respect isn't performance, it's posture. I learned this from an elder who never directly acknowledged what I was asking. I didn't mention the little people. I didn't have to. He listened, then said, "Some things don't want gifts. They want you to stop taking." That sentence rearranged something in me. I stopped narrating the land to myself, stopped thinking in terms of ownership, stopped treating silence as something to fill, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, the resistance softened. But here's the rule no one writes down. Once respect becomes necessary, it is never optional again. You don't return to ignorance. You don't get a reset. You either adopt or the world becomes less cooperative around you. This is why people dismiss these stories, not because they're false, because they demand too much change. Think about it. A creature you can't photograph, a presence that doesn't attack, a consequence that looks exactly like coincidence. How do you warn someone about that? You don't. You let the stories circulate. You let the careful ones feel the weight behind the words. And you let the careless ones keep laughing until something quietly steps back from their lives. That's the real danger, not being harmed, being unacknowledged. I still sense them sometimes, not visually, not audibly, but in the way certain places feel complete without me. Like I'm permitted, not welcomed, and I don't push that distinction anymore. Because coexistence, I've learned, isn't about being seen. It's about knowing when not to reach. There's a reason these stories don't end with proof. No bodies, no photographs, no final confrontation where something steps into the light and explains itself. That kind of ending would be dishonest, because the little people don't want to be resolved. They want to be remembered correctly. Long after everything else faded, the disturbances, the hesitations, the sense of being evaluated, one thing remained unchanged: the rule, not spoken, not written, felt. If you move through a place long enough, you learn the difference between emptiness and restraint. A field can be empty, a forest can be restrained. That's the difference most people miss. I noticed it when I stopped trying to experience anything, when I stopped expecting encounters, when I let the land exist without me narrating it. That's when things stabilized, not returned to normal, stabilized. Some nights when the wind moves low through the grass or the woods go quiet too fast, I feel that old pressure again, not fear, a sentiment. The same sensation you get when you step into a room and realize a conversation has paused because you arrived. I don't linger when that happens. I don't look for signs. I don't test the silence. Because curiosity is not neutral. It's an action. People ask why these beings never appear clearly, why they stay small, why they remain just outside perception. The answer isn't mystical. It's practical. Small things survive longer. So do stories told quietly. So do warnings disguised as folklore. So do rules that never announce themselves. The little people are not here to frighten you. They're here to correct a behavior, to remind you that not everything exists for observation, that some spaces are conditional, that coexistence is an agreement you don't get to negotiate. If you've listened this far and felt nothing, that's fine. That means the story passed through you. If something tightened slightly, if you felt a need to be more careful without knowing why, then the story did its job. Because the real ending isn't fear, it's awareness. And awareness, once activated, doesn't switch off. Somewhere tonight, someone will step into a quiet place and feel the urge to lower their voice. They won't know why, they'll just feel, watched politely, measured gently, allowed for now. That's where the story ends, and where the rule continues.